Can I just check, Abby, that you can see my screen okay?
Yep, I can see it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. And just double check as well that panelists are on mute. Good. Well, I'm going to say hello and good afternoon. We didn't realize that we were going to be here today on day one of having a new Prime Minister, but there we are. My name is Yolanda and I sit on the advisory board with some very esteemed colleagues. I'm going to show you a picture of them all in a minute. This is what they call the pink and fluffy talk, you know, just sort of give people a chance to join in and get through the link process. But it is delightful to see those of you who have arrived already. So I'll be mentioning a couple of times as well. There is the opportunity to ask questions of our panelists today. They're going to be sharing with you a very insightful journey. And our subject matter today for the webinar is going to be why the lack of Black, Asian and minority ethnic men in our UK security leadership. And while we wait for people to arrive, I will mention that, you know, equality, diversity and inclusivity is a really key important narrative for IFPO, but we're not just about the narrative, we're about taking action too. And this is one of our commitments to highlighting this very important subject, because I think a lot of people think of diversity as just women or maybe just the LGBTQ plus community, but marginalized communities exist in a very broad way. And one of them today is our Black and Asian and minority ethnic men within the UK security industry. So welcome, thank you for joining. Just a little bit about IFPO actually. For those of you that don't know the International Foundation for Protection Officers, we are a UK chapter for a global body of people primarily with the focus of looking at security professionals on the front line. We have an advisory board drawn from across the sector. I'm going to show you pictures of them all in a minute with a very new recent hire. But you can see that we've got representatives sitting at BSIA Awards, the UK, Irish, UK and US OSPAs, and Security Fire Excellence Awards as well, which is coming up in November. I'm also going to show you some key dates of interest, but here's our board. Aren't they great? Happy, committed bunch. This one here, Peter, he's on our panel today. We've got Abby, who's on our panel today. And there's me in the middle, and that's a very old photo. So let's move on. These are some training accreditations that IFPO are really focused on driving forward. We are going to be giving out a lot more information about this, but if you're interested in getting an accredited body training, you know, for the job that you do, definitely think about reaching out. And if you've got any questions or anything at all about anything that we talk about today, just stick it in the Q&A. We've got our estimable colleague, Mike Hurst, managing the Q&A box today. So first of all, UK and Ireland IFPO, we were launched and we've only been going just under 2 years. We've won already Irish OSPAs for training initiatives. We've contributed many articles to many of the security media. And this is one of several webinars that we produce just to talk about the subjects that we want to keep up in the forefront of people's minds. And we lead the way on mental health and well-being for frontline officers. If you're interested in joining, don't hesitate to reach out. Here are some of our associated bodies. So dates of interest coming up. If you want any of these, Mike can put the link in the window. Makes you realize how busy our industry is, really, when you think about it. We've got Fire Conference 2022, then we're going into 2023, and then it goes around in a full cycle. But this is the website. We'll put it on the chat group for you to go in and check out all the security events that are coming up in your area. So I'm going to stop sharing now because we're going to come on to introducing our panels. So first of all, I'm just going to let you introduce yourselves individually, your journey, your position, your title, where you come from, and then we'll go around and we'll circle to the first question. So Abby, we'll start with you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Yolanda. Hi there, everyone. My name's Abby Petka. I hold a postgraduate degree in operational management. I'm currently the managing director of Magenta Security Services, which is a multi-award winning security company. I've spent 35 years in the security industry trying to make a difference and to improve standards across the board. My journey started with one of the largest security companies in the industry. I spent 8 years with them, and it's probably where I suffered the most in terms of discrimination and the difficulties I went through. But for me, it was about making a difference, and it was about making sure that I could lead and others could see what I was doing and try and follow that. And that's what I've done over the last 27 years I've been with Magenta.
Thank you, Abby. Thanks for joining us today. Much appreciated. Coming over to you, Candy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Iskander Jeffries, also known as Candy. Been in the security industry for over 20 years. Like everybody, at the time, it was a second career. I fell into security by mistake as a security guard. And I started and I was sort of bouncing around. And then one day somebody came and shook me and said, look, Candy, you being wasted. It's either you make a career out of this or you find a new career. And I had a good, long, hard think about it, and I decided to make it a career. I saw security as an opportunity, although it was dominated at the time with ex-military and ex-police, and here I was with no background to match that, but I still decided to push ahead. I had a great mentor. I've worked for wealth of companies. I got my CPP back in 2013. In 2019, I was awarded the Freedom of the City of London through the Livery Company. And here I am now sitting in a leadership position. When I look back to the young man, yeah, it's been a journey. But what's driven me, and I think that's the most important point, is early on in my career, I suffered at the hands of others. I was passed up for promotion multiple times, and you won't believe this, but one of the sites where I was passed up for promotion 4 times, the fellow managers that said I wasn't good enough, 2 of them who were involved in making that decision are still there today, 15 years later. So yeah, anyone that ever gets told you're not good enough, yeah, don't listen to them. Just drive, motivate yourself, and you'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Candy. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your journey later on. Look, we have a new face with us today, Peter Stunstad. I hope I've done it justice by saying your name right. I have practiced it a lot. But Sitan Rasani with Core Security was not able to make it today, forever committed to the major cause, which is obviously business, and he apologized in advance for not making it. Peter, there's some big shoes to fill here, but I think you're more than capable. Tell us about yourself.
Right. Well, I think the first thing that I would like to say is that I'm not working in the security industry actively, which I guess separates me from the rest quite significantly. I have been working in the security industry. I spent the first decade of my career, just as the others, working my way up within the private security industry. And interesting, I think I didn't face as many challenges as one would expect. I do have a few insights on why that is, and thoughts about why that is, and perhaps I would get an opportunity to share those. But around 2012, which coincidentally is at the very same time that I got both my, if you like, heavy security certifications, the CPP and the CISM, was also the time when I left the industry and became an academic. So now here I am in my ivory tower, looking at those that still toil and do the hard work. And for that, I salute you.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, so look, let's start off. People Management reported in August this year that men from ethnic minorities are paid less than white colleagues. And this won't come as a surprise to anybody here and any of our panelists today. There are many of us that have known that for some considerable time, but is anything being done about the pay gap? But more importantly, a very good colleague of ours, Sharon Hay, those of you who know her, hello, Sharon. She said to us, you know, it was quite disappointing how 20 years later, we're still having this conversation, and it's frustrating. Abby, I'm going to come to you first. Has anything changed?
Let me start by saying that when I joined the industry, a bit like Candy, it was led by ex-police officers, ex-army officers who had already had a career and were looking for something to fill the gap. I joined the industry to make a career. I joined as a student, and while being a student, I got promoted several times within the organization I was with to a certain level. But has anything changed? The answer to that question is no, I don't think it has changed. We're still having to work twice as hard, having to be better qualified to stand still. I applied 27 times for promotion within my organization at that time. And each time I was given what I would refer to as silly excuses. Oh, you live too far away from the office. But then somebody else would be appointed who lived even further out than I did. And after 27 attempts to being promoted, now bearing in mind that I had a postgraduate degree and I was training my bosses in the job role, I just couldn't understand why I couldn't become the boss, as it were. And it got to a point where I actually went out to a meeting with one of my senior bosses to a customer where the customer was actually asked if they had a problem working with a non-white manager. And it was at that point I decided that this was ridiculous. I had to prove that it wasn't about the color of your skin. It was about the job that you do and how good you are at what you do. And I left that employer and I set up Magenta Security Services. Now, we're a multi-award winning company. We do things differently. And the point I'm making is that it's not about the color of your skin. And unfortunately, there is that prejudice still out there. People are still having to prove and continue to prove themselves if they come from an ethnic background. And that's a shame. And, you know, I would have thought by now we would have had, if you like, more leaders in the industry that could be a beacon, but we don't. We have a handful of people that are achieving the goals, but having to work much, much harder than their peers. So I don't think things have changed. On the surface, the industry's changed a lot, lots of technology, lots of career progression, but unfortunately for the BAME community, it's not improved. They are still the bulk of the officers on the front line. They're not in management.
Abby, thank you. And thank you for sharing your experience with us. Candy, what's your opinion on the last 20 years? Has anything changed?
I think the security industry is changing, but it's changing in other ways. And the subject that we're talking about right now hasn't changed. It's still a subject. This is why we are gathered today to talk about it. I mean, you just need to go onto LinkedIn. You just need to look at other companies and see who they have at their leadership helm, and then that will tell you there really hasn't been any change. But where the industry has an opportunity to catch up is, I think, the security industry it's moved along. If you look at the tech companies now, the tech companies are very diverse. They are leading the way in that field. They don't bang on about it. You don't see them shouting about their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. They are living it and they're doing it. But there's still a lot of other organizations that are attached to security, or security is attached to them, and that change hasn't come. So for me, in the short answer is, I'd say no. I don't think it's changed.
Peter, what's your view on the last 20 years from your perspective, and especially being in being an academic? Has anything changed?
Well, I guess I'll provide a somewhat more theoretical answer, but I do believe that it has changed quite significantly for the better. And I would like to highlight, I think, two main drivers of that change, and that would be globalization and complexity. I think that we are increasingly meeting threats and risks and issues, I guess, that are global in nature, where there is an increased need for there to be, if you'd like, multicultural or multi-background members of staff that do understand these issues and can address them quite differently and more effectively. I think that globalization is driving for increased diversity in that sense, and complexity is another issue as well. We are in an ever-increasing race against technology, where cyber-enabled crime, for example, those are increasing, exponentially. And with that complexity in general, again, exacerbated by globalization, I guess, you would then be looking at the need of competence. And that competence doesn't have any color. It just needs to be done. And the one who can meet those demands of the market, I guess, will be the winner. So I guess those two things are driving, inadvertently or indirectly, a positive agenda for change.
That's very interesting, and it is really good to get your perspective as well, simply because of the position you're sitting in. Candy, did you want to come back in and say something there?
Yeah, and Peter's raised a fantastic point. That's why I said tech companies are living it and driving the industry. And for security companies that are attached to those, they have to keep up. And I think the key there, Peter, is globalization. Companies that are global have to deal with a multitude of individuals, race, color, creed. It doesn't really matter. You have to do business in the global environment. I think where we haven't seen the change is those companies that are not attached to those global companies and are not driving forward at that global level. And I think that's where we need to discuss, especially the UK industry. We have a lot of security companies that are not global. They're not thinking. Some don't think outside Manchester, some don't think outside London. And you have that very small mentality. And that's, I think, also is where we are today.
Yeah, I agree that there's the closed mindsets is going to be a very key thing. So look, we are already getting questions from panelists, and I'm going to jump straight in with one, if that's okay, guys and girls, because this question, I think Les Allen has asked, are opportunities for Black and ethnic minority males in senior security roles being overshadowed by the high profile women in security initiatives? I'm going to come to you in a sec, Abby, for this, but it also prompted me, Les, to think, are you thinking about our Conservative Party's election results? Is everybody more trusting now of a woman in a high priority, a high profile role, rather than a an Asian British man? Because we haven't yet voted an Asian British man into a senior position in politics. So I'm going to come to you, Abby. It's quite controversial, that. What's your view?
To be honest, I think Les has a point, because people are trying to be politically correct, and there was an issue where there weren't enough females in senior roles. So it may well be that females are being preferred. But my point still goes back to what I said originally. It's not about color, it's not about gender, it's not about anything else but ability to do the job. And that's what it should be based on, irrespective of whether you're female, male, or whatever color or creed you are. It's about the ability to do the job. And we don't need to have positive discrimination. We need to have people valuing what they've got within their organizations, irrespective of people's color or background. That's the ideal industry we want to be in.
So, Candy, coming to you then, same question. Is the security industry behind?
The industry as a whole, I would say, is still behind. I mean, you just need to look. You just need to look and scratch the surface. Back to the question: are women overshadowing men of color? That's a very, very good point, and I think it needs a lot more discussions. But I have seen instances where people are looking for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and for them that means let's hire a woman. Yeah, we've got a ED&I program. We need senior leadership on the board. What do we do? Yeah, let's hire a woman. And then I mean that in the nicest possible way. It's no attack on women, but it's an easier way for companies to as you said, it's an easier way for companies to shift it, I suppose, and not look at the wider picture. Picking a woman is always the easiest option, and that's always used a lot by companies that yes, they have a solid diversity, equity, and inclusion program because we've got a woman on the board. So yeah, I think it's an easy cop out. And back to Abby's point, it should go down to competency. Are you the best person for the job? Do you have the right qualifications? Let's not just hire you because you're a woman, or let's not just hire you because you're a man of color and you tick the box. It's about finding the right person for the job. And hand on heart, I can honestly say in every bunch of applicants, there is always the right person for the job that comes from some form of ethnic minority. It's just our companies willing to take that step forward. And then again, yeah, the company I work for right now, they're fantastic. I mean, they hired the first woman back in 1856 as a female detective. And that's back to a time when you think about it, during social times, women didn't work. Women weren't allowed to work. And so we don't talk within our organization, we don't talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We live it, we do it. We've been doing it for over 170 years. It's not something for us to brag about. And I think most companies see that as the easiest way out. Hire a woman and let's talk about it on LinkedIn. Let's sell our clients our policy on DE&I and what we've been doing and how we do it, and let's get out there, let's put videos up, let's talk about how great we're doing it. But yeah, I think that there's a very fine line by actually doing something about something and actually be showing to act like you are doing something.
Peter, there's a common narrative, certainly with Black and Asian women and men, that they firmly believe they have to be twice as good as their white counterpart. And in fact, if they are twice as good, why aren't we thinking as future employers, I want to hire that person because they've had to work twice as hard to achieve what they've achieved? We're not shifting that way yet. Why is that?
I think that here is where some affirmative action may do good. I mean, okay, so let's start from the beginning here. I mean, I think there are risks. We've heard here from previous speakers and panelists, and I think most people agree here that it is about the competence, and that should kind of come in the first room, that it's the ability to do the job. And I don't think that there's a big disagreement around that point. I think the issue is, to what degree do we let that competence slide in order for any minority, be it ethnicity or gender-based, and in order to achieve the same outcome. And in some areas, we've seen these situations where we've lowered standards for example, women, for those to be able to join certain branches of the military and in stuff like that. And that has some, there's some criticisms leveled against it, and perhaps rightly so. But on the other hand, I think there's a very interesting point to be made around where the competences are, if not identical, but where they are similar. And where they are similar, I think that here is where organizations should be a bit bolder and work with a bit more with affirmative action and say, well, actually, we're going to take that risk of hiring someone else here, because it has been scientifically proven that diversity is beneficial to the bottom line of any organization. Any organization, that is, not limited to any particular field. So there is room for affirmative action, but I think there's also room for discussion around why competence should still remain as a priority, I think. Yolanda, I think you're mute.
Happens once. You triggered me a little bit there, Peter, because I sat in that finalist stage against a white male counterpart, and we went to 5 stages. We went to a 6th stage, which had never been done before. It was unprecedented, but they still went with where they felt safe, and it wasn't with hiring a woman. So you've clearly got to be, as an individual, good enough to get all that far, and it literally is down to where you fit and hiring in one's own likeness, which takes us back to the subject today. If there's a lack of Black and Asian men in a leadership role in security, this is it's a self-perpetuating negative cycle, because there isn't enough inspirational roles and people to inspire our front line, where there's an awful lot of Black and Asian men and women on our front line in security. So, Abby, we've talked about the what. What's the how?
Well, on a number of occasions, I've spoken about the fact that as an industry, we have people that join us as students who are studying degrees and other senior levels of education, and then we lose them. And we lose them because the mindset in the industry is not correct. We don't nurture these individuals. We already have access to them, and we don't offer them a career path that shows them how they can develop. And that's the problem. You know, I could go to my staff right now, and as to be fair, as a company, we offer them career progression. We show them how their education can help them progress in this industry. But as an industry, we don't do that. You know, we look at people as to what they can offer, and then you pointed out about the risk element, and it's the risk element. It's where senior managers feel comfortable and not wanting to take the risk. But if we're going to develop this industry where we're going to have multicultural leaders, people that are coming from multicultural backgrounds, we need to nurture them from the early stages. And the fact is that we have access to them from an early stage. Because if you look at the industry, a large proportion of students work in the industry. I did. I joined the industry as a student, and I stayed in the industry because I thought I could make a difference. And that's what I've done over the last 27 odd years with Magenta. But my point is that if you've got access to students, if you show them a career path, you're more likely to hold on to them and give them that opportunity to become senior leaders within the industry. That's what's lacking, mindset.
Candy, we talked about this in our prep meeting. You talked a lot about promoting from within. What is this your how in relation to solving this issue?
It 100% is, Yolanda. And I mean, the Premiership in football for football fans, I'm not a football fan, so I really don't know the ins and outs, and I'm sure somebody's going to correct me on this. But I remember a few years ago, there was a thing where I think UK clubs were given a quota on how many homegrown players they should have in the team. So I don't know if that ever came to fruition or if it was a discussion, but I remembered it and it stuck with me. And so 2 very quick points. And I will talk about the man guarding industry in this sense, and I will speak about London inside the M25 or the M25 as a boundary. I know outside of London, the industry is very different. So I'll speak about what I know. I don't have the exact numbers, but we are 20,000 plus security guards within the M25 across the UK industry. And hand on heart, there was a time where I managed almost 3,000 staff, and out of the 3,000 staff, as part of my remit, hand on heart, I can say 97% were of some form of ethnic minority. And then when I went to the next stage up and I looked at my peers in management, it was 97 or 98% white. You can't tell me that that's the right representation of the industry. You can't go from that amount of people to a very small pool of management and say no one's broken through. So that alone shows you there is a problem. And back to promoting from within, I won't mention any names and I won't give too much away, but at the time there was a young lady that worked for me as a receptionist. She was a part-time receptionist. She was fantastic at what she did. She got to come into the office on an ad hoc occasion over a 3-day period because we had an event running, and her dedication to the job and the role was phenomenal. Off the back of that, I brought her into the office, and then a few months later she got promoted. And I remember a director at the time telling me, and the particular lady in question was from Eastern European background. I remember him asking me and saying, "You're not surely going to put her in front of a client with that accent?" I went, yeah, I still persevered. Today, she is now in a global role for a tech, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and she's leading a global function in the space of 5 years. And we're going from a part-time receptionist, and she was overlooked at the time. And when I did put the case forward that she had the right attitude, she had the skill set to learn the industry and be a success, the one thing that went against her was her accent. So, I mean, there you go. And again, the person that said she had an accent is still within that organization at that low director level looking after London, whereas now this individual is in a global role, leading a global function for a tech company. So, I mean, there's a perfect example. So lastly, to close, Yolanda, I'd say to all these man guarding companies, go to a 25% rule, or if you want to be really bold, go to a 33% rule. For the next operations manager position that comes up, promote from within. If you've got 4 managers, if you've got 10 managers, have a 25% balance. That 25% of your management pool has come through promotion. Or if you want to go a step further, 33% of your management pool, one in 3 has come through promotion. If you do that, we will see a change in industry. But again, all these man guarding companies that are out there, they all talk about it. They all tick the box. They'll tender for work. They'll put diversity, equity, and inclusion in every single documentation they tender for. They will put it on LinkedIn. But when it comes down to proof in the pudding, ask them, how many people have they promoted from within? How many people have they seen the light in? Somebody saw a light in me and said, look, Candy, this is what you need to do to progress. You can't tell me with those thousands of individuals in London that are working night shifts, that have families, that are they're working twice as hard, as Abby said. Most of them are students, which shows they have a brain on their head. You can't tell me none of those are good enough for promotion. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent point and incredibly well put. You know, look, Peter, I know that you've got something to offer in relation to the how, but I'm going to pick a question from our esteemed colleague, Matthew Pacelli. He basically writes, do you feel that many organizations are promoting diversity more in a checkbox mentality rather than legitimately believing that diversity is much needed? And I thought it would be a good idea, Peter, to direct that question to you because, you know, you sit in a different industry and maybe there's a different perspective there.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I am the right person to answer that. I mean, I wouldn't know personally to what extent that happens in the security industry, as I am far from operations these days. What I would say is, again, from a very theoretical perspective, that it is certainly happening. That EDI is addressed in very much a tick box way. But I guess that's the situation with many of these, if you like, new initiatives that come up. When they do, it's all the rave, and then everyone tries to kind of abide by it. But then only those that really kind of understand and buy into the underlying concept, and if you like, ideology and the philosophy behind it, are the ones that actually do something about it, and not just let it be a tick box example. I mean, go back to the financial crisis when we had SOX, for example, coming in, and where that was obviously a big thing, but that has certainly turned into, well, almost obsolete by now, but a tick box exercise of compliance. And I think that many organizations at this point, some organizations at this point may feel a little bit of an IDE fatigue, where these issues are turning into tick box exercises because they don't understand and they don't buy into the underlying concepts behind them. So I guess yes is my shortest possible answer to the question. Yolanda, mute.
Sorry, I keep alternating my mouthpiece and my mute button. The last question that I
can I add something?
Yes,
to that?
please, Abby, go ahead, go for it.
I do agree that a lot of companies do use it as a tick box exercise, but there are genuine companies out there who genuinely believe in offering a career path, irrespective of color, irrespective of background, and it's trying to emulate that with other companies to get them to understand that that is a good thing for the industry. I can only give you my example. My example is that we don't do it as a tick box exercise. We genuinely believe in what we do, whether it's this, whether it's corporate social responsibility, whether it's environment, all of the things that we believe in, we push forward. And you know, we need to get, and again, I refer back to this mindset. If the mindset is a tick box exercise, that's what you're going to get. We need to get people to show examples of what we're doing and get other companies to emulate what we're doing. And that's when we'll improve the standards across the industry. And that's when we'll get better career paths for all, not just BAME people, but all people.
Sorry, Yolanda, I just, sorry to hijack your panel, but if you look in the questions, the last question from an anonymous attendee is, how is IFPO going to change itself when you have 16 white board members and only 3 from ethnic minorities? Can I answer that?
Yes, please go ahead. I'll give everybody the opportunity to answer that.
Yeah, and again, It's quite simply because there's not enough of us that have broken through to the leadership function. If there were 16 individuals like us, I'm sure 16 individuals would be on the board. But very simply, the only reason there's 3, if you've pointed out 3, is because there's not enough pool to pick from. And this is why we are having this discussion today, hopefully to inspire a younger generation to see us and say, look, I can do it. Abby started his own company. I can do that. Candy's doing this. I can do that. Peter's an academic leading his function in criminology. I can do that. So that's the reason we're having this. So yeah, not to attack us, but the reason is there's not enough of us.
Yeah. And you know, I know that IFPO is providing a good structure around mentoring within the security industry. I know there's some more information to launch around that. So if anybody present does see being part of an advisory board as part of their career journey, get in touch with us. If you're not quite ready, we can mentor you. It would be absolutely stunning to have a subcommittee of inspired individuals who want to see making change a part of their career journey. And then look what you can claim for it on the back. You can put it down as your objectives for your workplace objectives. You know, you're doing pro bono work. You're basically volunteering and you're offering your expertise. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. And I hope that you feel confident next time you want to ask a question that you can put your name to it, because we invite any questions, even if they appear controversial. Abby, what would you like to add in relation to that question around why we have so many white faces on our board and perhaps not so many of color?
You know, I have to say that when I joined the board, I didn't find any issues. I never felt that I was the odd one out, as it were. You know, I had discussions with other people on the board. We all had the same goals. We're all trying to achieve the same thing for the industry. So color was never an issue for me. And the fact is, and as Candy says, we're trying to be beacons for other people so that they can see what we've done and how we've achieved it, and they can follow suit and do that for themselves. So at the end of the day, Candy's probably right. There isn't enough people in the pool to select from that have the right skill set. But the point is that people can build that skill set, and they should talk to us. They should ask us how we've done it. If they want to know, we're more than happy to help. I mean, I often speak to other companies about various topics. I often speak to, you know, BAME people about how they can move their careers to senior level management. So we're happy to help. Candy, I know, is happy to help. We've had discussions about this before. And so, you know, we're not here just making up the numbers. We are here to make a difference irrespective of our color. And, you know, that's the point.
We discussed, didn't we, in the prep meeting, that there may even be space for a Black and Asian minority group to support the security industry, in a sense that the security industry now has the Rainbow Group. And the Rainbow Group is the first LGBTQ plus group to spread across all of our security memberships and businesses and organizations to help form and join a LGBTQ plus community that have a voice. So maybe there's an opportunity here. And I only remember this because when I was in the police, you know, there was a Black police group. Because, you know, they needed to get together and they needed to share their voices and they needed to set an agenda as to things that they needed to achieve. So maybe there is a huge gap there. And then in doing so, those amazing women and men in those roles can then inspire others through other types of mentor programs. So there's definitely space there. Peter, Jane, our esteemed colleague, has said, isn't the support of colleagues from the multicultural network the same as the gender gap? It is the promotion of equity. What's your view on that?
I'm not going to dismiss that question. I am, however, going to address, I think, the composition of the IFPO board, because here's something that I have felt many times when in similar situations. I mean, back when the IFPO UK board was started, I was what I think, I think you and I were both part of the very original group, which was about 5 people, right? And at that point, a very balanced group, if you like. There were people, you know, like me, of color, and there were women, and we all had that. And that obviously felt fine in that sense. But what immediately strikes at least me, I don't know if this is true for anyone else, but perhaps you can share your experiences as well. But what strikes you is an immediate sense of imposter syndrome. Am I here because I tick that box? Or am I here because of my competence and my academic prowess or whatever it may be, right? But those things cause doubt, and you don't know, and you obviously want to give anyone there, the benefit of the doubt, and you think that, well, no, actually, this must be good. But it takes some time, and it causes some, if you like, insecurity and build up. And I don't know. I would really like to hear from the others here if you had a similar feeling when joining certain organizations or situations.
Abby, you go first.
You know what? I sit on a number of different boards now and a number of different organizations. And to me, it's the effort I put in to make the changes I think are necessary. So to me, I've never felt that I'm in the wrong place or that I'm not worthy of where I am because of my color. It's about the difference I make. If Small Business Network, I became their press officer. I write articles for them. I make a difference. People come to me and say, I read your article. It was brilliant. I'm going to do this and this after I've read your article. When I've inspired other people, I've had security officers that have worked with me come back to me and say, you know what, you've inspired me to set my own business. I've now set up an accountancy firm. I've set up, a building firm. I've done something else. Unfortunately, they haven't set up security companies, but that might be because they're not in that field. But the point I'm making is that if you inspire people to make the change, then the job is done well. That's all that matters. We face discrimination every day of our lives for one reason or another, not just around jobs, but about various other things as well. And to me, I've always tried to put that to one side because I'm a positive individual. I do things to make a difference. And if I sat back and just dealt with all the negative comments about color or not having the ability because you're from a BAME background, I wouldn't get anywhere. And this is why I keep going on about mindset. People's mindset needs to be changed to look at people's quality and what they can bring to the table and not the other aspects. And when we achieve that as an industry, we would have achieved something great.
So coming over to you, Candy, for this, and also I want to see if you could challenge this question. Does the panel believe, and I'll start with you, Candy, that unconscious bias plays a role in the issue? This is a question from James Moore. How do we overcome that as an industry? And we know that there's conscious bias and unconscious bias. Tell us your perspective on that.
The short answer is yes. There's always that unconscious bias. Just back to like the example I gave of a young lady being brought into the office and straight away her accent was put at it, or the color, and I think that comes from very, excuse me, but I will say very small-minded individuals who don't see the quality within a person. And back to what Abby said is, and back to Peter tying it into like coming into boards and things like that. I've done a lot of firsts in my life, and I've never gone into those situations ever thinking that it was because of my color or because I've always known I am there because I'm bloody good at what I do. I give 100% at what I do. I spent, before I joined Pinkerton, I spent a small stint with Formula One. I was the first security manager they hired in their 70 years career. So I've done a lot of firsts. So when I come to boards and I get invited to boards and things like that, I sit down and I know that I'm there because of what I bring to the table. I'm not there because somebody's ticking a box or because we need somebody of color, so let's invite Candy to the board, or we need somebody of color who's prominent, let's invite Abby. No, we make it to these positions, and that's come through a leadership mindset. It goes back to your mindset. If you have the right mindset, everything else will follow. Unconscious and conscious bias, in simplicity, yes, it is there, and it's there from people that are not so culturally educated, and yeah, for whatever reason that you would discard an individual that, let's say on paper, and many experiments have been done like this, Yolanda, where names have been removed from CVs and you'd pick the top 3, and then the moment you put the names on them, people already start bringing biases into it just by reading a name. So yes, it is a problem, but you need to get over it. It's difficult for me because my mum was black and my dad was white. My dad never ever said to me, "You're white," and my mum never ever said to me, "You're black." I was just a child. And so I grew up as a human being in this world. I never ever identified as anything. It's as I got older, and you get those boxes. Are you mixed race? And I look at that and I'm like, hang on, I had to think about things like that for the first time. So yeah, unfortunately, it's small-minded, uneducated people that put biases against for whatever reason.
Thank you, Candy. Pete, I'm going to come to you because Riaz Samani has put in a really good comment here, and I think you should have the opportunity to respond. Riaz says, excellent point, Peter, in relation to your last comments. He says, I want the industry to go from fitting in to belonging. That's a very important statement. He says, I've been made to feel uncomfortable by my white peers several times in the past 14 years in the industry, which has then increased the sense of imposter syndrome. And I think all of us here have witnessed cases where white peers have maybe been unfair to peers of a different nationality. Peter, what's your response to Riaz's comments?
I mean, first of all, I'm obviously very happy that my fellow panelists don't share the same imposter syndrome that I just experienced. You just expressed, which is good. But I mean, I do think that that's just the. What's the name of the person who made the comment?
It's Riaz.
Riaz. Well, I know. I think there's well, I think that there's a point there. Perhaps it's possibly more maybe of a figment of my academic environment than it is actually of the security environment, maybe. But I actually think that even thinking back on my career as within the security industry, that even then it was the same question. I never doubted the fact that I was good or competent, but I did question why I was put in certain situations. Is this because of that competence, a recognition of that, or is it because of a recognition of something else? And I wasn't always sure of the answer to that question. And I think that to go to Andrea's question, I think there's a point to be made here for senior management, for the leadership within organizations to make it clear to every single one about the things we just talked about. Here we put competence as a priority, right? And we are willing to take risks, if you like, on people that are not fitting the traditional or old school, or if you'd like, even obsolete mold, but rather here we look at the competence and what you can bring to the table rather than who you are and what color your skin is. Yeah.
So we are going to be wrapping up with final questions, and then you'll have the opportunity to make your lasting comments. But before I go into the last question, and the last question will be, what would you do differently in your career? I know, Abby, your response is probably going to be not a lot differently. But before I come to you, look, I've worked across the security man-guarding industry, and those organizations, those businesses still exist. You can find them very easily because their security physical security team. There will be predominantly white and very well English accented during the day, and the night shift will be very black and very Asian and very heavily accented with their comms. Those organizations exist today. We know that they're there. What can we do to change that perception when a client says, they don't ever sort of say it straight away. They don't come out and hit it on the head. There's a lot of covert language around how they want the daytime, Monday to Friday physical security team to look and be presented. And they use words like, smarter and with good communication skills. And these are just veiled phrases for we want it to look more white. Abby, what's your view on that? And then finish up with what you would do differently.
My view is that I do come across this with some customers, and I think the point here is we have to educate those customers that if you want someone that speaks well, has a good education, they don't necessarily have to be white. I have been to many meetings with many customers and potential customers where I've made that point, and I have put together a training package that gives that individual the chance to improve their standing so the customer can see that there's an improvement. And if a customer said to me, I only want white officers, I would not take that customer on. As a principle, I would not take that customer on. And in the past, I've done that, where I've refused to take customers on if they have those sort of prejudices which can't be changed. Where a customer has valid reason, not that I can think of any valid reasons why they want to think that way, but if they had a valid reason, I could get them to think differently, educate people differently, I would do that. That would be my preference. But there's times when you just have to say, this is not going to work, and you have to walk away from it, unfortunately. And we've done that. So as an industry, we always try and make change, but you have got these old prejudices that are still there. And a lot of them are people that have been in the industry for a very, very long time, maybe close to retirement, and maybe sooner they go, the better, really, is the point I would make. Because the younger generation, the newer generation, don't tend to have those stigmas attached. They have a very professional way of looking at things. And not to say that there's never going to be, but I'm saying in the main, most people from the newer generation have a different way of thinking, and color is not an issue. And it's not, it's got to be a male role or it's got to be a female role. It's the best person for the job. And I think that's how we move forward. In relation to doing things differently, no, I wouldn't do anything differently. I stood up 27 years ago and made a point that it wasn't about color. And that's how my company came to be. Over the 27 years, I'd like to think that I've proved time and time again that it's not been about color. We're a multi-award-winning company, as I've already said. We are a national provider, so we have offices all around the country. And we've developed quite well over that period of time. If it was all about color, I wouldn't have achieved any of the stuff that I've achieved. So, for me, it's about standing up for what you believe in. And my if you like, my comment to anyone that's on this webinar or listening to this, do what you believe in, stand up for what you believe in, and try and change that mindset wherever you can. And that is the best advice I can give anyone. And I know it works because I've had people come back to me and say, I've applied that and it's worked for me, and they've got fantastic careers now, fantastic businesses, and we just need to do more of it as an industry, not as individuals.
Thank you, Abby. So Candy, over to you then in relation to what would you do differently? And is there anything that you can share around some of those perceptions I talked about the day shifts and the night shifts and how very differently they look? And what would you do differently if you could go back and change anything?
Okay, so let's start with the day shifts, night shifts. Yes, companies need to put their money where their mouth is, because at the end of the day, it literally comes down to money. For these man-guarding companies, it's money. I've seen firsthand with a company that's massive on LinkedIn on how they promote their D&I initiatives and how great they are at it. And then I've also seen instances where they've been in situations where the client has specifically requested that, and they've gone and said, yes, yeah, we can do that. So yeah, that again, it's always a tick box exercise, but companies need to put their money where their mouth is. And that's where they need to say, look, if you have those views, we don't want to work with you. And those are, I think, enablers that will start changing the industry and start changing the mindsets of the people out there. As Abby said, you don't always have to be a revolutionist. You can sit down with that individual and you can talk to them first. But first, always communicate. If that doesn't communicate, then don't do business with such individuals. Next question, would I do anything different? Simple answer, no. I am here today because of the trials and tribulations I went through. I had to motivate myself. It gave me the drive to where I am today. I wouldn't be sat here talking about this subject had I not experienced those. So I think in a way, those bad experiences I had have made me stronger. They've made me succeed. And I haven't succeeded because I'm a person of color. I've succeeded because my mindset was right. I did push through. I continued to learn. I continued to grow. And that's why I'm here today. So I'm not here today, and I don't feel that I'm on this panel because of my color. I'm on my panel because I deserve my seat at the table. And so anyone out there that's listening, you can make a career literally out of anything. Yeah, Colonel Sanders, KFC, became a billionaire at the age of 62. That's when he had the idea to invent his fried chicken that everybody knows today. You're never too old. It's never too late to make a career of something. Just stick to it, work hard, And the other thing I think, which is also important, I was helped because I had a mentor. So if anybody out there listening thinks that they need somebody to guide them or talk to them, I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to help. And in situations, I can always say, go speak to Yolanda, go speak to Peter, go speak to Abby. They might be best suited to you. So yeah, find a mentor that's going to help you, that's going to coach you, and that will definitely play massively in your career progression. But yeah, you can do anything, you can achieve anything, and don't let other people's prejudice or whatever somebody has about you, that's their issue, it's not your issue. Yeah.
I actually think I feel quite moved by what you've just said, Candy. You're quite inspirational. If no one has told you that recently, you are definitely inspirational. And I hope that people do reach out, because it took me a long time to realize that a mentor could change my world. And as soon as I got a mentor, my world changed, and in a really good way. So sometimes you just need that little bit of focus. Sometimes it's a mentor that you're going to work with for a short time. Sometimes it's a mentor that will stay with you throughout your career. And you can have mentors for lots of different things, and they can help you figure out what you need to figure out. And that's the most important thing. So hopefully your message has been inspirational. Before I come to you, Peter, for what would you do differently? Jane, our esteemed colleague, Jane Robertson King, has basically said that the Security Commonwealth have the ED&I special interest group, which now covers across the whole sector, and representation from its membership. This is quite unique because membership bodies, and there are lots of us, thankfully, because I think, you know, you have a thriving industry when you have lots of membership bodies. It proves and underlines and underpins the existence of the need for them. But when they start to work together and across a platform, have a defined scope about real key issues, and ED&I is one of them across the security industry, because several marginalized groups exist within the security industry, that's a really good way forward. And another announcement I have as well is in relation to the David Clark Award for Diversity, which is opening soon. I think Mike is going to put it onto the security events website, so check that out for any updates in relation to the David Clark Award for Diversity. And if you know of a colleague who you feel is very worthy of a diversity award nomination, then that is a great opportunity to nominate somebody. Peter, and we're going to wrap up very shortly before we go round the room and just give everybody a few seconds to talk about their lasting comments. Peter, what would you do differently, if anything at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is interesting to see here that no one is really looking to change anything, and neither am I. I would have to say, I wouldn't do anything differently either. I don't regret leaving the industry about a decade ago. I do believe that I have now positioned myself in a much better place to actually change the minds of the future generations of leaders. We have hundreds of students coming across our halls every single year, and I believe that, you know, whatever I can, if I can change one of those minds into one that is a bit better, you know, that's great. That's progress. But I would like to echo something which is a bit different here. I don't think that has much to do with, I guess, the EDI agenda. But I mean, I would like to emphasize the importance of a mentor, because that has been the key in both my, if you like, career paths, both in security and as well as academia. The mentorship, having someone, if you like, a role model, someone to look up to, that motivates, inspires you, and pushes you to become better and more, has been key. And I guess, just to make it clear, that both my mentors has been middle-aged, if not old, white men, but that hasn't stopped me. So yeah, there we are.
Okay, so to wrap up, I'm going to come around the room very quickly, but I think I'm going to say also, especially in relation to our anonymous viewer who put the comment in about why so few visible ethnic minorities in our IFPO board, I think it's fair to say that any marginalized group can't get anywhere without the support of key influential people across the dominant sector. So we promote, certainly amongst women in diversity, that we need white men to help us on our journey and hold our hands with us and go through that experience. And so, you know, I just want to give a nod to our board who work tirelessly to put their best foot forward and dedicate their time to IFPO and all of the things that are really important to our agenda. And a big nod to Mike Hurst as well for supporting us throughout our journey. And it's a pleasure to work with you. And before we round up, I just want to give a big thank you to Richard at Critical Arc, who are our partners who have supported us today in relation to the seamless technical support. Abby, I'm going to come to you for your lasting comments. What do you want people to remember about today? You're on mute.
Okay, so I'm not on mute now. I think what I want people to remember is that they can all make a difference, no matter how great or small. Everyone that's on this call can make a difference with the topic we're talking about, whether it's helping somebody to achieve their goals, whether it's trying to educate people in how best they can get their career path sorted out. Everyone can make a difference. And it's about communication. Candy said it earlier on. If people are communicating, if people are, talking about their experiences and people are trying to make a difference, that is my lasting comment. We can all do that. So please try and make a difference to yourselves or others around you.
Candy, what's your lasting comment? What do you want people to remember about what you said today?
You can achieve, if you can see it and visualize it, you can achieve it. I don't want to come across like all those YouTube videos or all that stuff that goes on. But a personal story for me is when I was studying and really believed that I was going to make it within the industry, somebody gave me, and I think Mike Hurst remembers these, is every quarter ACES used to send out the newsletter, which was 3 or 4 pages, and at the back of that, sometimes, or in the front, I can't remember, was you had the board and they had their pictures and their bios. And I remember reading one of those one days and thinking, oh my God, one day I will get there. And I came to that realization not too long ago. I was like, oh my God, I did actually achieve a position on the ACES board for 2 years. And I only came to that realization afterwards. So yeah, if you can see it, work hard, have a dream, and go for it. And believe me, you'll look back and it's a wonder what you can achieve if you put your mind to it. So yeah, just work hard at it, put your mind to it, get the right mentor, and the world is your oyster.
Awesome advice. Peter, lasting comments from you. What do you want people to remember about today?
Also comments is this. I think the COVID pandemic has given each and every one of us a bit better understanding of what exponential growth means, or at least thinking about it. When something doubles, it grows very, very quickly. So here's my lasting comment. Make it your mission to try to help 2 people throughout your career. Help 2 people in theirs. And with that, and if everyone does that, we'll have exponential growth across the industry. And before you know it, we will lift people from wherever they are to wherever they want to be.
Peter, that's utterly awesome and great advice. I shall go and do that myself. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your insights with us today. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Have a great day. Stay empowered. Fight the good fights. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.